So we're talking now two madreges in Tainug. Atik and Pnimius Atik, which correspond to the avodah of the Yashar and the Chassid. The avodah of the Tzaddik corresponds to Arich. Arich corresponds in the nefesh of a person to Rotzen. So the Tzaddik Goizer, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Goizer, and the Tzaddik is Mevatel. So the Tzaddik overrides the decree of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Seidish Tal Shalos. Baruch Hu, blessed be He. So that's referring to Zoh, and that's Seidish Tal Shalos, or in simple language, Bezdin Shamayla, the heavenly court. So the Tzaddik overrides. That parallels, that's exactly the nature of Rotzen, that when willpower is evoked, so it overrides the faculties of the person, the conscious faculties. It overrides intellect, it overrides emotion over their protests, and the will get done what it wants done. The will open the mind, close the mind, manipulate the emotions. A person wants to have a relationship with somebody because of a particular agenda, even though there's no chemistry at all, and you normally wouldn't like him at all, and the emotions protest, but they're silenced, and the person will engage with that person, socially, etc., because he has an agenda, he has a rotzen. Does he like the person? Does not like the person. But the will overrides his emotional resistance. Intellectually, he doesn't pair with the person either. The person's a buffoon and a fool and an arrogant person, whatever the reason, or the other way, he's a buffoon and arrogant. Either way. So intellectually, they're not a pair, but because he wants to be his friend, because it suits him to be his friend, he has some kind of agenda. So over the protest of his own natural inclinations, he behaves in a friendly manner. That's a rotzen. But Tainug is explaining it doesn't enforce. If there's a Tainug in a relationship with that person, then everything radically changes, obviously. Now, the example we gave yesterday, I'm going to repeat it again, is shlichus. Is the Torah world resisted it. Over time, the Torah world has come to understand it and to some degree embrace it. That's the level of Tainuk, because they're starting to see that that's what the Eibishter desires. Starting to understand that, because this is infiltrating and it's just instinctual. That lahitzi is yokar mizaylel, that this is the kavan el. So Seder Ishtal Shalos, as we explained yesterday, using the example of the Maimbel, lahitzi zolel yokar mizaylel. So Seder Ishtal Shalos time is a person's frei, then it's his decision, and you suffer the consequences. Nobody forced you to work on Shabbos. Your counterparts, other Jews, as it just said yesterday, also went through the Holocaust, also had faced difficulties, lost their jobs every week, and they persisted in keeping Shabbos and growing their beards and eating Chalav Yisrael. So Bezer Shemayla says, and that's what the whole Frum world said, that I'm very, very sorry. Esav made his choice. His Yaakov's brother brought up in the same household. You went that path. You made your bed. You sleep in it. And we will not deal with you because we don't want to be affected by you, because the taivas and the money and the worship of status and everything else that has driven all of this, making a living to begin with, which for you is overriding consideration, it's seductive. We don't want to get caught up in that. So we shall, it's not so much we cutting you out. You walked away from Yiddishkeit. That's the kind of satmir of the whole Torah world. We're rejecting these Yidden. If you want to come in, we'll welcome you. You want to do tshuva, you're welcome to walk through our doors. But you walked away, so what do you want from us? So then along came the Lubavitcher Rebbe. No, there's a previous tiny of the Eivish that is. That's Bezdin Shemali, you're right. It's at Bezdin, Akadosh Baruch Hu is Bezdin Shemali, that's correct. But along came 7 generations of hammering Chassidus and the Rebbe especially, and so on, and the world's starting to realize, no, what the Eivish wants is to Mekadev, another Yid, etc. So there's an appreciation of that. That is an example of the first level of Tainuk. An appreciation, they applaud it, and will engage in it to some degree, but to define their life, and this is their Gishmak, no. That's the third level of Tainuk. When you become a Shliach, finish, period. You live this life of being Mekar of another Jew, and that's your greatest delight and pleasure and schus you could possibly have in your whole life. That's the third level of Tainuk, which we're up to. I'm explaining it in a marshal. The Imam explains it in Madreges Lamayas. We're in the middle of the second paragraph of Yisches. Let's begin again. So these 2 dargis in Tainuk. The marshal is clear. There are many examples every day, but that this marshal of clear, the resistance, then the appreciation, and then that's what we do, of course, with the greatest of pleasure. There is no other than the Eibish's Ratzon to Mekar Yid. That's the Dir B'Tachtonim. This took a long time to get through. We're on the cusp between the Tainuk and then Pnimius HaTainuk. Even in Lubavitch, never mind the world. Lubavitch is there. What's the wish of every Lubavitcher parent? The church of Shlichus. And they themselves engage in that to the degree that they're able to. In this way, this is Pnimius HaTainuk. This is touching Atzmos, revealing Atzmos. The book really hard to get here. It still does. Okay, so let's begin again. I guess we'll start the second paragraph again. So what are we explaining now? The 2 levels of Tainuk. Actually, I'm not going to repeat that again because I think we actually did that already twice. So we're going to pick up the text. After the words, by the word avol, it's after the square brackets, a third way down. The nearest number, right? There's a number of 54 that's way above. It's just above 57. And 57, you'll find in the round brackets, 1 word in from the line. I'm sure you all found it. Now just go up 2 lines after the square brackets. Found it? Guys, yeah? Avla shinui. So he just described now classic Tainuk, as opposed to Rotzen. If you look in the square brackets, do that. Just go back up to the square brackets. But when the bitl of the Gzeira happens through the Amshach of Atik, that's Tainug, not over the resistance of Ishtalshalis, but Ishtalshalis now embraces this. Again, in the Moshe again, I don't know if it's a perfect Moshe, but the Moshe is saying that the frum world is applauding this, and it's a wonderful thing. But still, but still, this doesn't define their lives yet. That's not, oh, this is something wonderful. This is natural and organic. That is our life. That's the whole metzius of a yid. That's our shlit. That's the whole identity to mekar of another yid. That's over here. And every part of me is part of that mission. Now, in Oisius of Kabbalah and Chassidus, the Pnimius Atik, what's Pnimius Atik as opposed to Atik? As we learned in the previous Maimer, Ein Sof Sheber Adlo. That's Ein Sof as it's revealed in the first of the Gimel Reishin of Keser, Reisha de Lo Yisyada. The Kivin, the Pirish Ein Sof, Ein By Shum HaKabbalah. What's revealed in Radlo, in Pnimius, which is Pnimius Atainuk? That's the Dargah Pnimius Atainuk. There's no Akbala, no limits at all. When David's Pnimius Hatainig is revealed, in the whole Ishtalshalis organically expresses that. Because Ein Sof has no limits. In other words, its truth, there can be no barrier to its truth, no resistance. The Eivish is the only reality. And Ishtalshalis is, in the end of the day, reflects that, expresses that. This way, that way, the other way, in a million ways. But what it's all saying is Inyan Muvada. And what's Inyan Muvada? Inyan Muvada is the Pnimius Hataynog to Lahaitzi Yakar Mizailil. That's where the Pnimius Hataynog with the Ein Sof, that's the expression of the Ein Sof. That's what the Ein Sof is. Ayid. The Gabel ain't shaykh in Ishtaushalas. Ishtaushalas as a, there's no Ishtaushalas. Ishtaushalas as a separate, as a reality unto itself, as claiming its own title. There's right, there's wrong, there's frum, there's frei. And they're hard and fast. No. Ain't shaykh in Ishtaushalas. Why is it right and wrong? It's all in order to carry out the previous Hakavana, to reveal Eid Milvadai. What does that mean? That even a Yid, that is the child of, he says, the Amoris, the Pasuk says, and brought up with nothing, this Yid will connect to the Eibishter. That's Eid Milvadai. The words of the Bible before, the Chiddush of Yisabcha. That's the Chiddush of Yisabcha. That's the Ikar Tainag L'mayla. That despite the tzimtzum, and in the tzimtzum, and in and through, and even because of the tzimtzum, he does tshuva. He comes back. That's the true Ein Mulvadoi. That's the true Ein Sof that ain't shayching and ishtalshalos. Now in square brackets, v'hagam shon nimtze but adlo, what do you mean there's no ishtalshalos? Because Ein Sof is in adlo. Reishad lo yisyada, that's the first level of keser. So there is an ishtalshalos. He says, she adds in square brackets, and before, he's not compromised. So if Ein Sof is in Radla, uncompromised, what is it saying? Radla, this darga, and every darga, all it is my desire for dir b'tachtonim, which is a yid. That's what it's saying. Doesn't get compromised by the virtue and value of Radla per se. Radla expresses, why is there Reishad Le'isyad, and why is there Ishtal Shalus? It's all for one, the Kudin, is Avakot, is Baruch, List, Le'is, Baradir B'tachtonim, and what does that mean? V'karav Yid. Starting with yourself. So the conclusion is, the bit like the Ishtal Shalus. So, how does the Gzeira of Ishtal Shalus now change? Ishtal Shalus says, as I said before, you sinned, you're out. So I'm shochas hagili the pnimius atik. So when pnimius atik is revealed, what happens? Ishtal Shalus. Lo ishai the gili the pnimius atik nase bit like Gzeira. They were affecting the bit of the Gzeira. Again, like a frum world saying, yeah, we see there's value to this, and it's a beautiful thing. We're glad you're doing it, and here's a check. But rather, when Pnimis Atik is revealed, ain't Sof Shebedadla, ain't Mokim Melachatchila Legzeir. What do you mean he's out? There's no Jew that's out. It's not kiruv rechoikim. There's no rachok. There's no one distant. That's when the Pnimius HaTainik is revealed. What the Eibishter wants, the ultimate, deepest, and primal decision, Tainuk. Yes, Vapizeh. I will explain here what the Rebbe Rashab writes. It's based on a Maimon and Ayin Beis, largely. This was quoted earlier in the Moishe Kislev. So who's mamshich this dafka the chassid? Why could you say Rishalmi? The Rishalmi describes it this way. It's based on the pasuk in Eov. Let me just get that pasuk again in previous Maimer. Where was it? No, is it towards the end? Shlomi Ma'amalav. Or was it in this Maimer? It's from the previous one. Someone wants to find it. And maybe it was in this Maimer earlier. I'm looking in the Kislev. Look in this one. Maybe it was quoted here first. To my Emma. I think it's here. No, it's in this mime we brought it earlier. In this mime. The pasuk. No? Let me get the pasuk straight. Yeah, here's a pasuk. It's in Rishalmi. So the pasuk says Vatigzer. It's in Ois Daled. Vatigzer Oimer Vayokim Lach. So the pasuk says, and you decree Vayokim, and it's established. It's referring to the tzaddik. Actually, the chassid he's saying. The diak is, what's the word lecha for you? That's the meaning. You decree to say, and so shall it be for you. What's for you? So the diak of the Rishalmi is that I feel. Look at it, the end of his dalet, middle of his dalet, 2/3 down. I feel like it's even if God says this way, and you say this way, Didach Kaimer, God says, what you say will be, Didi like Kaimer, what I said will not be. So now, the Rebbe Rashab brings that Maimon Chazal. So now he's explaining, now we have a deep appreciation of what that Maimon Chazal is saying. Back to the Maimon here. So that's why the Maimon connects the Inyan of Chassid to this Maimon Chazal. I feel who even God is saying, even if I say this way, and you say this way, your opinion endures, not mine. The opinion did what does it mean? My opinion is no longer. It's not because you said this way, so I override my decree. Rather, when Pnimius Atik is touched, the Pnimius HaKavana, the deepest desire of God, when you say this way, Bezer Samayla said he's out, and you say Chas v'Shalom, he's a Yid, and he's the whole point, then ein Malkim l'chatchila l'gzeira, there's no gzeira at all, like kaima. That's the dik of the Lashon Gemara. It doesn't exist. The gzeira doesn't exist. Who's mamshich is dark of yiducha? That's in it of chasid shamshachim malkim sheboya idab for the bracha to draw down pnimis hatainig in a way of bracha, which means b'derech hamela, not overriding, not at sivri, not even a peula, which is tam tainug. But bracha, Polish taushlis is applauding, is engaged, is part of it. Not applauding, wrong. That's the outside. That's a not a witness I'm looking for, not a witness, but spectator. Yeah. But derech memela, they're part of it. And what is peil that Inyan de chasidecha dafka? That's the way of chasidecha. Ki amshacha shal yedei chasidecha. This is the Aveda Pnimisatik, this is the Tachlis. It's not even a Pa'ula. Alabadarach Mamela comes from within, and everybody's part of it. With the greatest sense of privilege. Okay, Oistes. Which we'll learn together. We didn't learn it yet. The difference between the three Amshachas we're talking about here of Tzaddik, Yosher, and Chosid, which corresponds to Arich, Atik, and Pnimis Atik, who Gamin Aberurim, it's in the consequence, in the result of where the world is affected. Namely, the Abirush Adeh Gilu, the Arich, or B'derech Malamayda Lamata. So how does will have the effect? By a position, milamayda lamata, from above to below. I know the below surrenders. Okay, you won the argument. The recipient is not elevated from his own mitzias, el adarab. On the contrary, he really is, he's just overwhelmed by it, can't offer a counter argument, so he goes along. He's silent. On the contrary, because it revealed to him is a level beyond him. So there's a wow factor, that's true. And he's swept away. That's Seva Kalam. And Arich is Seva Kalam. He's misbattle mitziyus. He says battle. He doesn't offer resistance. And again, it's even a wow. But he's not really changed. Swept away, misbattle. And therefore, even after the birur, now that he no longer resists, in his battle, he's being this battle, because of the great revelation, the great experience that he experienced. And so therefore, no resistance, and he goes along. He changed, he didn't change. He changes overtly, behaviorally, but not in his mitzias. And therefore, it only lasts as long as he's in that environment that sweeps him away, that's overwhelmingly beautiful. But when he's out of that environment, he's back to where he was, which he never really left. That's the Bira Mitzad Rotzen. The mice is that it has to go through these stages to a degree. It's the Seder Inyanim, Tzaddik Yosher Chosid. Certainly in Chinuch of your child, you want to create an environment that is overwhelmingly good and inspiring, and the kid is swept along with it. Kid. That's how it's got to start. Way too premature, early, change from within. He's a child, it's just beginning. And easily influenced. You want to make sure that the influence is the greatest one possible. The environment. and a very zealously guarded and protected environment. So Taki is his battle. Kabbalah's early goes along with it, and he's not being forced, he's swept away. There's no real change yet, that's yet to come. Then comes stage number 2. Vabiru Shaydei Gilui Atik. So now Gilui Atik revealing already enough time to get much more pnimistic connection. That engages the Tachtan himself. He is himself enjoying it. So what's the raya? That when he comes home, and between in the breaks, when the man, he opens the sefer and learns. Not only because the environment is that when it's a geschmack environment, everybody's learning, and then there's prizes, etc., etc. But he does it even on his own. Here, there's a real change. When the tainig is when he himself has a geschmack in it himself, then there's a real change inside the tachta. And the result, that is a consequence of the pnimis, of the not pnimis, the tainig, the lamaila being revealed. Like explains in the Ma'ibed that Rabbi Shaban Ayin Beis the Binyan Abira de Gilu Sheir de Shloimeh. So what was the bira by Shloimeh? That's this first level of Tainug. That Gilu Sheir de Shloimeh Yad Gilu da Atik Shloimeh Balach was Gilu da Atik. The moon was full. Shagilu Moshach Elev was a wonderful, extraordinary period in history, and the sparks were drawn to him. This is incredible. The dugma savuka shemesheches it's like a torch that draws the sparks to it. He didn't do anything, he just did his thing, and these sparks are drawn of their own. That let's go, we got to see this, we want to be part of this. We need to experience this. So that was a much higher bira, not like Moishe Rabbeinu, which is right. The Mishkan. This is based on Mikdash. Explaining Chassidus the difference at length in the Mishkan, the base of Mikdash, Pasha Begashmi is temporary, permanent. The ground's forever holy there in the base of Mikdash, Milamata, because there's a bira mitzad tachta. Ella, nonetheless, not b'shleimish. There's still a ishtaushulus relative to Atik. It's as explained at the beginning of the ois of the previous paragraph, that Atik itself implies netak, removed from something else, you're acknowledging something else. There's still a separation. There's still a degree of separation. And therefore, what's the definition of ishtaushlos? Gedrach tachten hu taivis nedam hazer. Tachten, he's a tachten, and he's heipach alien. But I'm still drawn to this because this is incredible. I want to experience it. But I'm still me. But it's coming from me. I'm not being overwhelmed. I'm making the journey. But still, it's a heipach the alien. End of the day. Therefore, the alien shenimshach boy. So, what kind of revelation is now in the Mizman Shloimeh? And therefore, the refinement, the level and the refinement, the end of the day, I still remain. It's something addition to me, and I'm happy it's part of my life. It's beautiful, but it's still not me, not my life. It's something that I happily engage in and make the effort to. But that's my metzias, not my metzias. Continue tomorrow, conclude the Bidur Shaydei, Pnimi Hisatik. Be'ezrat Hashem.